Hey there, baby, I could use just a little help. You can't start a fire. You can't start a fire without a spark. This gun's for hire, even if we're just dancing in the dark.
All right, all right, all right. Hopefully you had a chance to meet some new friends, take some photos, shoot some videos. Welcome back. So, we're kicking off the afternoon with our International Research Abstract Competition. Before I invite Dr. Rakesh Joshi to come on stage, I'm going to just tell you a little story. Dr. Rakesh Joshi is actually the first hire we made at Skinopathy. He's a PhD in life sciences from Purdue with a master's in artificial intelligence from Schulich. And when we were starting to think about, how do we build next-gen AI that can really make relevance in science, we got so many recommendations to go talk to him. So this guy's a genius, and it's really good to have him on stage. And so I invite Dr. Rakesh Joshi, lead data scientist and PhD at biochemistry for Skinopathy, who will walk us through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Me being a genius, that is completely questionable at this point. Hopefully everyone enjoyed their lunch. We thank you for being here. We heard a lot of great insights from our clinicians, from our patients, their patient journey, as well as from the startups. We thought that it would be great if we hear from academics who are working in the vitiligo space. And in order to do that, we had a call for abstracts, and we wanted to focus on about 4 specific areas. One was, of course, clinical and basic research, AI and medtech, which is something very close to us here at Skinopathy, but also camouflage and camouflage sciences and the studies that are being done there, and more importantly, or at least in my mind, the most important thing is mental health. And we sent out this call. We got some really great abstracts. We will be presenting 3 of those. And unfortunately, due to time constraints, we can't ask them questions, but you can search them out after they've given their presentations and ask them questions. That should work. Without further ado, I would like to invite Gabriela Guerra. She has a PhD from the Federal University of Minas Gerais, Brazil. She, of course, couldn't join us, but she's going to be joining us through a video where she will be talking about her study, Vitiligo as a Diasporic Cartography, Art, Identity, and Mental Health in Afro-Brazilian Perspectives. So let's hear from Gabriela.
Hello, I'm Gabriela Guerra. I'm an artist and researcher, and it's a great honor to share my work at Vitiligo Day. I would like to briefly present my doctoral research developed at the Federal University of Minas Gerais in Brazil. The study, titled Afro-Diasporic Body Cartography of Vitiligo, was carried out collectively with a researcher group called Cyber Terreiro. This research began from a very personal place back in 2010. When I was studying Afro-Brazilian culture, I realized that this knowledge wasn't included in my academic curriculum. One day, looking in the mirror, I saw the shape of African continent in one of my vitiligo spots. In that moment, I perceived an artistic potential in vitiligo, which led me to ask, could vitiligo serve as a metaphor for the historical erasure of the Black population in Brazilian history? I I began searching for artistic images that echoed the process of depigmentation. At the same time, I noticed how often vitiligo is treated through a biomedical lens, focused on the skin as a disease to be fixed, despite its emotional and cultural dimensions. So I began to ask, what if vitiligo could be seen not just as a condition, but also as a symbolic and aesthetic territory? What if it could be understood as a kind of map, a diasporic cartography, marking experiences of identity, difference, and resistance? To explore these questions, I used an arts-based methodology inspired by cartography. This means I didn't just study vitiligo, I lived it and created through it. The research unfolded through artistic practices such as photography, digital drawing, poetry, and performances. These works were later shared in an art exhibition, opening a space for dialogue and reflection. The theoretical foundation of this study includes powerful voices like Grada Quilomba, Bell Hooks, Paul Gilroy, Nego Bispo, Rosângela Paulino, Marisa Campillo Müller, and Sheila Walker. Their work helped me reflect on how colonial histories affect our bodies and minds, and how art can become a tool to reimagine and reclaim these experiences. One important finding came from the audience's reactions. Many people who saw the artworks shared how deeply they related to the themes of fragmentation, visibility, and belonging. Through art, vitiligo became a metaphor for both brokenness and reconstruction in the African diaspora. This resignification transformed the perception of vitiligo to something symbolic and deeply human. In conclusion, this research suggests that Afro-diasporic art can be a powerful tool for psychological empowerment and symbolic healing. It resonates with the 2019 World Health Organization report, which emphasizes how the arts can promote health and well-being. In the next phase of this project, I intend to engage more directly with health professionals and people living with vitiligo to further explore how art can support healing process, emphasizing how creative and aesthetic practices empower us to forge life strategies and possibilities for existence. If you'd like to know more about the research or are interested in collaborating on the next phase, please feel free to get in touch. I would be delighted to share it with you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Gabriela, for that talk. And I think I'm guilty of that, looking at vitiligo from the perspective of only medical sciences or biomedical sciences. It's a learning process for me as well, I guess. Something that our next speaker is going to do, Alejandro, is going to build on this. Alejandro is a master's student from, hang on, let me just bring up my notes before I mess this up, because I'm very good at doing that. So Alejandro Vera is a Master of Science at the University of Rochester Medical Center, and he's going to talk about his study termed Identity-Forming Experiences with Vitiligo Through Age. Alejandro, please come up.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here and grateful for the opportunity to be presenting some of my work that I completed through my master's program at the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry. My project was titled The Identity Forming Experiences of Vitiligo Through Age. It's an independent project, but I wouldn't be able to complete it without the help of my mentors, Susan Diaz and Patricia Luck, also from the University of Rochester.
Alejandro, I apologize. We're updating your presentation that you sent us late last night. So you have the old one up. If you just give us 1 second, I apologize. I'm going to tap dance. This is totally my fault. I do apologize on behalf of Alejandro. He actually came in from Rochester on the bus today. So we want to thank him for his time, and I want to make sure that he has the correct presentation on the stage.
Thank you.
So real fast, Alejandro, while we're doing a bit of tap dancing here, and I do again apologize for this.
All good.
You're a student in Rochester. Why did you choose to come all the way up to Toronto to talk about this?
Definitely the proximity, and also I just wanted to take advantage of having a kind of like local event to connect with other individuals with vitiligo, researchers, medical individuals in the field. So I was really grateful that it was somewhat nearby to make the journey up here. And yeah, it's actually I wrapped up my master's. I'll be moving actually on to another program in the fall that I'll share a little bit more about.
All right, Alejandro, thank you so much for that. You have the correct presentation, so rock and roll, my man.
Awesome. Alrighty. So yeah, like I said, this is about the identity-forming experiences with vitiligo through age. So I'll run through a little bit about myself and then the purpose of my work and how I did it and what I found from it in today's presentation. Awesome. Just to share a little bit more about myself, I'm Alejandro Vera, currently a human subject research specialist at the University of Rochester Medical Center, where I completed my Master's of Science in Medical Humanities in 2023. The work that I'll be sharing today was part of my capstone project that I was able to complete in the year-long program, and I'm hoping to be able to continue it in my upcoming PhD program at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston. Beyond my professional and academic identities, something I'm very proud of is to be an individual with and growing into an advocate for vitiligo. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here today and to be sharing some of the stuff I learned. The main aims of my research were really to explore bodily, cognitive, and existential identity-forming experiences from written narratives of the lived experience of individuals with vitiligo. I also wanted to focus on these perspectives through age as individuals grew within their identity and the relationship with their skin, really for the goal of addressing the gap of understanding what the lived experience is as individuals grow up with vitiligo, and also the limited opportunities that some have to be able to communicate how having a highly visual skin condition may impact their mental health and identity to families, providers, and communities around them. So to be able to do this, I collected 20 narratives that were all global online works, so either interviews, blogs, video essays, or articles that individuals completed. I tried to keep it to a shorter format for length's sake, and then I also included my own kind of autoethnographic experience and writings as a part of it to be able to integrate into the work. I then completed a qualitative coding and thematic analysis process really informed by philosophical perspectives of embodiment, shame, psychodermatology. Tried to learn a lot from other highly visual skin conditions like psoriasis, eczema, intense or severe acne, and further research that have been done in those fields and how that can be applied to understanding the experiences of individuals with vitiligo. I focused in on three main identity-forming experiences. Bodily, really focusing on how individuals feel about their physical selves and about their bodies. Cognitive was surrounding the way that they think and made decisions mentally about how they feel, how they interpret their changes in skin or changes in the relationship with their skin. And then existential being more broad about how they connect to others, their societies, deal with feelings of fear, doubt, shame, and identity at large. Defined age a little bit, childhood up until 10, adolescence through 18, and then young adulthood further into 25, just to expand how much or how many narratives I was able to include. And then worked with a couple of the departments at the University of Rochester, including the departments of dermatology and then my home department of health humanities and bioethics to do a little triangulation and just kind of like validating of some of the experiences that we found. I would be remiss not to include some of the actual experiences that helped inform the results that I will present next. I grouped these by age category that we went through. Childhood, really beginning with these individuals not really having the processing capabilities or tools to be able to understand the difference that they're observing and recognizing with their own bodies, could be misinterpreted as something that is wrong about themselves and that needs to be corrected or fixed, and really marks the beginning of a very intimate journey with themselves, their skin, and the relationship to it. As we move on to adolescence, this is when individuals with vitiligo, I feel, take a little bit more action with the relationships with their skin, whether that is camouflaging or hiding their vitiligo. Particularly the quote stating, "I don't know who I was," or who the next person would be, was when I read it, something very profound that stuck out to me, and I think really hit home in terms of my own experience with vitiligo and kind of having progressive depigmentation. So they start to kind of internalize this difference that is beginning to happen. And this continues on into young adulthood with individuals, really their identities becoming more linked to social interactions that they have and reflections about how it actually impacted them growing up. And the main results, we went ahead and grouped into thematic progressions for each of the identity-forming experiences that we looked at. So they each follow through childhood, adolescence, and then finally to young adulthood. So really for bodily, it was about observing difference at the beginning of individuals' journeys, then onto a form of kind of physical, like camouflaging, or being able to, like cover oneself or hide it from being as visible, and then transitioning into later ages, kind of embracing that skin identity, whether that's kind of like ceasing to camouflage or kind of embracing and accepting like their skin as is. For cognitive, as children kind of begin to recognize difference, they're grappling with what that may mean, and as they become a little bit older, start to internalize that and how it influences the relationship of how they think about their skin. And then into young adulthood, it's more so not about established confidence, but building confidence and trying to get to that state of full acceptance of whether that's their acceptance of their skin as it is, or in seeking, treatment options for it. And then finally for existential, starting off with starting to feel some of the pressures of differences from a young age. I believe kids are the most blunt individuals. So as well, those pressures that come from, family members, providers, schoolmates, things like that. And this becomes a little bit of a disconnect from others as individuals grow up. But at least what I've noticed from the narratives I looked at, transitions into really establishing identity and community, something I feel like I'm actively in the process of doing myself by taking advantage of opportunities like this. And And for a more extensive written version of all of this, feel free to scan the QR code, which should work. This narrative analysis was actually the first part of my master's capstone project, and the second was actually integrating these themes that we identified into a visual arts collection about some of these identity forming experiences. So I want to thank you all for your time, and feel free to reach out with any questions via email, LinkedIn, or here in person. And thank you.
Thank you, Alejandro. That was a very well structured study, and I'm sure it's going to be much more insightful when you build on that. Next, we would like to invite Hessa Asmani, a medical student and a member of the Vitiligo Voices Canada community, with her study titled A Cross-Sectional Analysis of the Quality and Readability of Online Resources for Vitiligo. Come on up.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Hessa Asmani, and I am the presenting author today from my team, who will be presenting our results from the study, a cross-sectional analysis of the readability and quality of online resources for vitiligo. So we are going to start off by going over some background information related to the research, the methods we used, the results we found, and the conclusions that we were able to draw from the research. So we all know that the effects of vitiligo are not just physical, and it can cause deep psychosocial distress and impaired quality of life. This study, the results of the study on the left up here are from Saudi Arabia. They show that many individuals face high or extremely high quality of life burdens. This shows that this is a global issue and not just something that affects people living in this area. We also know that the knowledge and research done on vitiligo is constantly evolving and growing, so are the treatment options. From things such as topicals to light therapies, surgery options, and other treatments, the options are endless, and there are also some alternative treatments available. They're not evidence-based, but they are also available and listed on many websites. Safe to say, there is a lot of information out there and available for everybody to read. So the question that we posed was, how much, or what is the actual quality and readability of vitiligo-related health information online? So we started off by doing 2 Google searches using IP addresses in Toronto, Canada and London, England on March 1st, 2025. Using the keywords vitiligo and vitiligo treatment, the first 60 results from each of these searches were drawn and pulled together to create a total of 240 websites. After removing duplicates and studies that did not meet our inclusion criteria, we were left with a total of 120 studies. The included pages were checked for mentions of ruxolitinib as a proxy of their timeliness. They were also tested for readability using these 5 validated scales listed at the bottom, and they were also tested for their quality using benchmark criteria and varied scoring systems. Here is a little bit more information on the indices used. For readability, all of these formulas shown on the left are what were used to actually get a value. And for the quality index, we used these scaling questions to find a score. So just as an example, the Mayo Clinic vitiligo page, we would first check their timeliness. We would check the website to see if there was a date mentioned at all, when it was modified, when it was edited, or if ruxolitinib was mentioned. If it was mentioned, we would know that it had been edited past 2020. Then we would check for authorship information. Was there a name of the person who wrote all of this information listed at any point through the website? Then to test for readability, we would paste the website URL into another website, and it would calculate the scores for each of these grade levels, like the SMOG, the Coleman-Liao, and it would create a average for all of them to get us a average grade reading level. In terms of testing for quality, the JAMA scoring system and the modified Discern scoring system were used. We would rate on things such as authorship and if any citations were mentioned at all on the website. According to the American Medical Association, written materials should be created for readability at the 6th grade level, thus ensuring readability by the majority of adults. We found from our results that the mean readability grade was 10.4, so very well above the average recommended level. This means that only 7.5% met the recommended 6th grade level. 25 out of 120 mentioned any MD or PhD, and only 37 listed any actual name of an author. 95% of websites were updated after 2020, and 28% of those mentioned ruxolitinib at all. 63% of websites discussed psychosocial impacts. However, unfortunately, only about a third of them linked relevant resources for individuals with vitiligo at all. Our findings emphasize the need to improve the readability, transparency, and timeliness of online information about vitiligo. While many different types of websites, such as advocacy or nonprofits, demonstrated good quality scores, a lot of them were still well above the recommended 6th grade reading level, therefore limiting accessibility to the general public. A large proportion of websites also lacked authorship transparency or citation of sources, which can lead to diminished user trust. Given the psychosocial burden and stigmatization associated with vitiligo, particularly among young adults and individuals with skin of color, it is extremely important to provide accurate and reliable information to reduce distress, enhance understanding of treatment options because there are so many out there, and support shared decision-making. Moving forward, partnerships between dermatologists, advocacy groups, and public health communications are critical to ensure that the online resources available are not only up to date, but also accurate. And it would also help lead to make sure that information is accessible, inclusive, and appropriate for many different diverse literacy levels. Here is a list of references, and thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them afterwards.
Thank you, Hessa. That was a very timely presentation on the importance of information we find on websites. In fact, something that we are trying to do with the Vitiligo Research Foundation is come up with a registry of patients, and then we can get their story in there, and then we'll have a source of truth, so to speak. We did have one more speaker who unfortunately could not make it, Dr. Omar El-Husseini from the University of Khartoum. But if he's watching, thank you for submitting your abstract. And with that, I'd like to have all of you thank our presenters once more. Thank you so much. And I will hand it over to Keith.
And of course, please join us on stage while we welcome you to the Order of Vitiligo Day Canada. Thank you very much. So before we start the next portion, I'm going to throw it over to Richard.
Yes, absolutely. This is just another kind reminder. If you do have questions for these roundtables or the speakers, please scan the QR code. You can also enter the URL directly into your browser, derm.lol/WVD, and you can submit your questions anonymously. Or if you want to put your name, by all means do so. But again, please scan the QR code for any questions and we'll get them on the stage. As well, oh, one more thing, the hashtag, if you want to put stuff on social media, WVD2025.
I think it's important. I think we're going to see World Vitiligo Day social posts from around the world, and we really need to show them how we do things in Canada. So go nuts on social, do some selfies, let's go have some fun. So, on to our next roundtable. Our next roundtable explores the new science around the skin microbiome and its potential impact with vitiligo. First, we have Dr. Rakesh Joshi, who has already made himself comfortable on stage. Come join us, Rakesh. Next, I'd like to invite to the stage Dr. Mimi Vega, Chief Executive Officer of Vegan Biome and chemist with a PhD in biotechnology. And our moderator will be Dr. Manasi Parekh, a board-certified family doctor with a focused practice in dermatology and co-chair of the New Professionals Network for the Ontario Public Health Association. And before we get started, we have a brief video to show.
Hello. Today, we're talking skin, microbiome, and vitiligo. First, you know your skin isn't just a protective layer, right? It's a living ecosystem. And it may be talking to your immune system in ways we're only beginning to understand. And today, I want to connect the dots for you between autoimmune skin disorders like vitiligo and the microorganisms, those tiny organisms living on your skin. Research shows that humans have the lowest skin microbiota diversity among primates. This lack of microbial diversity could throw off your immune balance, especially if you're already genetically predisposed to conditions like vitiligo. In vitiligo, your melanocytes, so the cells that give you your skin color, its pigment, are attacked by your immune system. It's what we call autoimmune disorders. And here's the kicker. Your microbiome imbalance, or what we call dysbiosis, it's the same thing, may be a trigger. A dysbiosis in microbiome can actually disrupt your local immunity, so your local response to invaders. It worsens oxidative stress, and it affects overall skin barrier functions. That's why your microbiome matters. It's not just about your glow or even premature aging, which we know helps. It's about protection, communication, and even peace of skin. We're still studying the full connections, but the future looks very promising. Probiotics, of course, there's a connection also with your gut microbiome. Prebiotics, for sure, we can put them directly on our skin. Even microbiome-targeted skin therapies. So here is what I would like you to remember. Your skin microbiome is part of your wellness story. Your immunity is super important. Your microbes can help in balancing it all. So let's make peace of skin your new goal for peace of mind.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vega, for that extremely informative video. Now we get to dive into this exciting topic. Of course, there's a lot we know. There's also a lot we don't know. So first and foremost, would love to just get your thoughts on this entire concept of diversity, and specifically if we have any data out there to speak to the diversity of the microbiomes for a condition like vitiligo.
Okay, yes, let's start with, well, you understood that we put this video because there was a few concepts that we wanted to make sure you understand to set the table before we start. And the diversity is one important factor. So what is diversity? To start, I'm going to say, we have different compositions of microbiomes. So the gut microbiome is one, the skin microbiome is another, and even in the skin microbiome, depending on the location, so if the environment is moist, or if it's oily, or if it's just dry, the microbiome will not be the same depending on where on your skin. And then between one person to the other, depending on where you live, your lifestyle, there's multitude of factors, including what you eat and your gut microbiome. So all of that affect your actual composition of microorganism or the microbiota, because the microbiome is actually the genes or the science of the microbiome. It's easier to understand, so we mix the words, but just a small clarification. So to come back to diversity, well, the more we have species or strains, and the more of them, the better. So there's two types of diversity, actually, but what we know is that no matter the composition, it does matter, and we'll get to that. But one super important aspect is the more, the better. You want to nurture your microbes. So I'm called Dr. Mimi for Dr. Microbe. No, that's over. But very, very important aspect that we often neglected.
Thank you so much. And now speaking about the kind of variance with all of this diversity, Dr. Joshi, what are your thoughts about how we could even go about perhaps categorizing it, or per se putting them into some sort of different, I guess, criteria for staging, for example? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
As a data scientist, I always think data. And as Mimi was saying, microbiome and genetics, that means we have a wealth of data about when the situation is normal or when there's dysbiosis, right? So I think where we can start with is something that you alluded to, Dr. Parikh, is figure out those fundamental questions. We know that there is some correlation between melanocytes and the diversity of the microbiome. We know once there's a dysbiosis, there is some relationship. We don't know if we don't know for sure if dysbiosis causes the melanocytes to react or whether it's the other way around. What's the cause, what's the consequence, right? So I think first, using all this data we have to nail that down with some really solid evidence, I think that would be the first thing I would do. And they have done it for gut microbiome, and I think they're getting to that position for skin microbiome, but that's where I'd really be interested to be involved in.
Yeah, so that's a very, very good point, because there's we couldn't understand the microbiome 20 years ago because the computer capacity wasn't strong enough. So now we've developed that capacity. We have lots of data, but we also have lots of conflicting data. So how do we stage something that is not, we don't have the baseline of, basically? And I don't think, like we were talking about this subject beforehand, I don't see the skin microbiome or even the gut microbiome, as being stage in its dysbiosis, right? It's like a blood work, is there stages for your blood work? No, it's indications that something else is off balance, right? And you raised a really important point when you mentioned that you don't know if it's the melanocytes or if it's something else. And in skin microbiome, there's a super scientific concept that is named the egg and the chicken. Yeah, so we don't know where it starts, and it's actually being used in conferences. That concept, it may be that the conditions triggers the dysbiosis, so the shift in the proportion in your bacteria to yeast to other microorganisms, but it could actually be that shift triggering the disease, and this is what we're actually uncovering currently.
That's fantastic and also very, very fascinating. I think you've already highlighted a lot of different areas for further research. I do also want to now switch gears a little bit to a concept that you alluded to in the video, which is that of both prebiotics and probiotics. I can count, well, so many times the number of patients that have asked me about, well, which one's better? Do I take both? And kind of, we know a lot of details with that and how it links to the gut microbiome, but could you speak to it a little bit and how it links to the skin microbiome?
Sure, actually, I think it's very, very similar in the sense that, well, the prebiotics, so just to be clear as to what it is the food that the microorganism will actually consume so that they can thrive and grow. Oligosaccharides are one inulin we take orally, but we call the fructo-oligosaccharides, the galacto-oligosaccharides, a FOS and a GOS are the most common for the skin, typically. So that helps, it feeds the microorganisms, obviously. Then there is the probiotics. What these guys do is that they increase the number of actually living microorganisms on your skin, so it reaches more easily quorum. I would say, very similarly again to the gut, well, we often use it in specific conditions. Some people use it regularly as well to maintain immunity. We could do that similarly for the skin. And finally, for the skin particularly, it can be done for the gut as well, but not as much. It's the whole concept of the postbiotics, which actually provide the environment. We were talking about peptides earlier today. Those peptides, those fermentation extracts, and also the pH. The pH of the skin, so of the products that you will use, will influence your environment and your microorganisms living on them.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think even from like a therapeutic standpoint, or also looking at these as maybe even augmenting some of the therapeutics that we have out there, we know that there's a lot of research currently on conditions like atopic dermatitis and acne, and specific companies as well that are working towards this. How do, I guess, we see that for something like vitiligo? Because as we just highlighted, there's a lot that we still need to elucidate, the chicken and the egg. So how, I guess, do we see these concepts perhaps going from more like bench all the way now to bedside? Any thoughts on that? I know it's a very broad and open-ended question.
Well, I can take a stab at that. I think going from bed to bedside for these specific things, we do need more clinical trials. It doesn't have to be a clinical trial for a medication or a drug or anything like that. It could just be large-scale trials where we're looking at more of the real-world data rather than parameterized clinical studies that we look at, right? I think once we gain those initial insights from real-world data, then we can create some observational studies, some non-interventional observational studies. And I think that'll give us that initial batch of data that we need to create those hypotheses to actually get to that. I think we're still in the nascent stage right now. So yeah, that was my 2 cents on that.
So I have a couple more cents to that, but but you were referring to specifically how to perhaps measure, right, based on like the data science you want to import, so to train an algorithm, for instance. Yes, okay, yes, absolutely, that makes total sense. From my perspective, the way I've seen it, because I digged, I looked deeply into specifics of atopic dermatitis and acne. And not so much into psoriasis, and I will tell you why. Because I worked in psoriasis specifically, and I knew the dynamics were different. So, depending on the conditions, the skin microbiome may be a direct correlation. Like atopic dermatitis, we know a solid skin microbiome is resilient, will protect against these flares. Whereas for conditions like psoriasis, which is very, very much systemic, we will see shifts in the skin microbiome, but the skin microbiome itself will not have that big an impact. In between, you will have conditions like acne, which are multifactorial. There's a lot of factors. Evidently, your skin microbiome helps because if it's solid, it decreases the inflammation, the local inflammation, but because it is also hormonal and diet and gut microbiome related, well, obviously, we can't control just from a science skin microbiome perspective. However, for vitiligo, I see a lot of parallels between acne and psoriasis because we've seen the gut transform, we've seen shifts into the proportions of the microorganisms on the skin as well, and it really depends also on the type of vitiligo, which is very similar to psoriasis. We see that maintaining a healthier skin or a solid barrier actually helps the skin, but for the disease itself, we have to take more of a systemic approach. So I do see these two being very much related, and I think to answer your question that skin health in general is complementary to any treatment that we would want to explore.
Yeah, no, that is definitely excellent and fantastic. Did you have any other comments that you were hoping to add?
I think Muriel covered everything in that perspective. I do have one question since you have gone in so deep with psoriasis and acne. What do you see when you look at the characteristics of the dysbiosis itself? Do you think it's more extreme where there's a larger systemic component? Was that something you kind of found?
That is a very good question. I haven't looked into that. That would be something that would be actually quite difficult to do because there is such a big variation of composition between a healthy microbiota versus a dysbiosed one, especially that because it varies so much between one person to the other. I mean, the big trends are there, but the specific composition varies so much that if you don't have the baseline, it's very difficult to sort of stage the condition itself from a skin microbiome perspective. Yeah,
that's what I kind of figured because I think, again, it goes back to the first thing I was saying, like, let's figure out a way to have a really solid baseline, and then we can start going, start developing further tests after that. Sorry, I'm jumping in with questions.
You read my mind. That was going to be truly my next question, because, and we've of course had these conversations previously as well, that there's so much that is unknown in terms of this entire idea of what actually characterizes the dysbiosis. And even from, if you're thinking from like a diagnostic standpoint, right now, of course, a lot of the diagnosis is done clinically. We've had speakers talk about how you can use like teledermatology. Of course, we work with Skinopathy and how we can use those types of like AI kind of algorithms to help get to that. It might take us maybe years, maybe months perhaps, to get that for dysbiosis and figure out whether it's going to be more perhaps just using like images of the microbiome and then help characterize what that dysbiosis is. Versus, of course, in clinical trials, they use things like tape stripping to get like the epidermis and then see if perhaps we can explore what that microbiome looks there or with swabbing. So I think that this is very exciting, and it's one of those frontiers where I think we can really work together across sectors, whether it's working with pharma or the biotech industry, of course, with clinicians and then patients, to figure out the next way forward. So I hope we've sparked some very, very exciting conversations today. Thank you.
Can I ask one more?
Of course.
Actually, because it's piggybacking on yours and on what he just mentioned, because I was really curious when we start conversing as to how can you get a snapshot of the skin microbiome. For vitiligo, it's quite visual, right? But still, there's great variability, and then there's different types. So even that, you need a lot of data. And then when you get to the skin microbiome, which is not visual, it is somehow with your devices. Is there a way that you could foresee that we could actually see the microbiome? And is there a way that the clinician can support that, like by routine photo taking, or I'm not sure?
Yeah. So right now, the technology we use is just mobile phones. So it cannot directly look into the microbiota, but after a couple of months back, when we were doing the side investigations, what we figured out was so there are companies that actually take your swabs and they send you the profile of your microbiota. What we were thinking along the lines was we could actually do almost like a gram positive negative testing, but not, of course, not using those stains, but similar stains on something that you just mentioned on a strip tape. You take a strip tape, you have those chemicals on that or sprayed later on, and that is what our technology looks at. Now, I don't know how much we can drill down and tell you, like, okay, there's only 10 different types of species or 10 different types of strains, right? I think what would be more helpful is using our technology. Like if you use our Vitiligo app right now, you can track the changing segmentation of your vitiligo patch and have that data correlated with the changing microbiota of your skin. And of course, you'd have to use like a company that actually does the DNA swabs and does that. And then do a temporal or longitudinal study. Then you'll have some really good data on whether dysbiosis is causing the flare-ups, when it begins. Is it only more impactful in the later stages of a patient's life rather than earlier in the patient's life? So I think there are two avenues we can look at by either comparing our computer vision system along with DNA or RNA data, or developing these things like strip tapes where you have some kind of a colorimetric analysis, which our mobile phone has the capability to do even right now.
Sure.
Yeah, if you're throwing it to me, absolutely. One of the questions is actually a word that you guys have been using quite a bit. What's dysbiosis?
Yeah, sorry, well, we mentioned it in the video that was maybe not highlighted enough. It's actually just an imbalance. So it's a shift in the proportion of your microorganisms. So usually on the skin you have 40% and 30% or 20%, like these are, pretty much usually stable. And then when there's a condition, this shifts. The yeast will take over, for instance, in a case of atopic dermatitis.
Another question that was asked, which relates a little bit to what you were talking about a moment ago, Dr. Joshi, which is it possible to take pictures of the microbiome using a microscope and analyze it using AI, and I guess for diagnostic?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. You can, like what I was saying was, of course, I wasn't using the microscope analogy, but you stain them. You take a swab, you stain them, you look at it under a microscope, you take images of that, and then you can track the changes that are happening. Again, depending on the stains we use, it might be something crude like gram staining, but it could be something more sophisticated, like let's say you're targeting a specific type of Corynebacterium or Staphylococcus, which makes up most of the skin microbiome. Then yes, you can do it that way. We want to remove using a microscope, right? We want to just be able to take a strip tape, you take or a swab of the patient, stain it somehow, take a photograph, and that should be able to tell you like how much of a dysbiosis you have. So we want to take that next step now.
We have one more question. It just came in now. Do you recommend any dietary supplement that has been shown to have an effect on the microbiota?
Well,
you can both go.
Yeah, okay, so I'll go. So for the gut, I mean, I think there's been studies, there's probiotics, and my approach for that is from a very general standpoint. I'm not a physician or clinician or nutritionist even, I'm a PhD. So from a biochemistry standpoint, like I look at the diversity, and that's what I aim for. So, like I think, and this is what I do personally, I have a mix, and I look at the studies. For the skin, I did exactly the same thing. I formulated my own thing to have everything, and I had the pre and the post biotics all in there, because it is very tricky to use active probiotics in topical formulation.
I absolutely echo that. I think that it depends on, of course, the variety of conditions that your patients are asking you for guidance on, whether it's them taking a lot of antibiotics, for example, and then for that you would definitely recommend them being on some sort of probiotic. To, of course, conditions, as we've chatted about earlier, like acne and atopic dermatitis, I think that there's a lot of research in that space that's emerging. So while there's no kind of specific brands, I think I agree with the mixture approach, because that's what the science supports right now. And that's kind of what we've been chatting about here, that there is no one gold star pre or probiotic that, we would say, yes, this will cure everything or take everything away. It's about working with everybody to find what that equilibrium is. And I think that's what we hope to do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't leave yet. We would like to invite you to the Order of World Vitiligo Day Canada. So, thank you. All right. We now welcome a conversation on how to responsibly use technology for patient care while making sure the Hippocratic Oath is never desecrated. I invite to the stage Dr. Colin Hong, co-founder of Skinopathy, and a plastic surgeon who was one of the first doctors in Ontario to create an EMR back in the 90s, alongside Orkin Jehan Shashi, founder of Thinkerbell, mentor for the Creative Destruction Lab, and board director of the Canadian Entrepreneurs in Life Sciences. Welcome both. Now, before I hand it off to Orchid, these are two people I know very well, and so I'll just give you a brief background on both. First, I'll start with Dr. Hong. Dr. Hong and I are good friends. He's my co-founder. He's the genius and visionary behind everything we do at Skinopathy. I've never really met a doctor who knows medicine as well as he knows, or Gen AI as well as he knows medicine. And he works with data scientists and medical doctors every single day. But the other thing about him is just how compassionate he is. So for the past 30 plus years, I'm sorry, I'm going to share something I guess most people don't know, but he goes on missions around the world where he takes his staff, his team, he brings his medicine, they pay for things, they raise funding so that they can go to underserved countries, so that they can operate and help and teach communities where they just can't get the help that they need. And I think most recently this year was in Tunisia and previously Cambodia, but this is something he's been doing for the past 30 years. So welcome, Dr. Hong. And Orchid is a maven and maverick of pharmaceuticals. She's been in pharma forever. Don't let her looks deceive you. But the one thing that she's been phenomenal about is driving innovation in the pharmaceutical world and being able to connect and identify when there are opportunities and challenges to grow and finding the right Canadian startups to actually help these global companies and actually help them grow. And she has a really interesting distinction. She's the only investor that I know of in Canada who last year invested in 2 of the top 20 startups in the country. Both of them are in dermatology. And so she picks winners. So Orchid, on to you.
Thank you, Keith. I wasn't expecting that. Yes, so I do have a conflict of interest. I am one of the investors in Skinopathy, but I'll just tell you a little bit about why I did that. Being in pharma for 30 years, 6 different large companies, every single company I worked at, we are very patient-centric, we're human-centric, and they are. There's a lot of amazing stuff that pharma does with respect to saving people's lives, and the medications that I was able to work on and sell and market save people's lives. But one thing that I really appreciate now being on this side is to be truly human-centric, you have to step outside of just one vertical, which is the therapies that are medicines. And there's so many therapies now that can be enhanced as a companion to other digital tools, but also dermatology is a space that I never worked in. And I can imagine, 20, 30 years ago, we had vitiligo, of course, and there was no insight, there was no therapy. So it's a really exciting space to be in. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to Dr. Hong, who I really respect dearly, on stage is to give you a sense of, the purpose behind this company, and why I invested was really the why. And that's my first question. Why did you, first of all, Dr. Hong is a very different physician than most pharma people are used to. He likes technology a lot, no offense to physicians, but usually you're not the first ones to adopt the latest tech. And so he's an entrepreneur as well as a very, very influential and successful plastic surgeon. So why did you choose this as a venture, and how did you get into the skin world?
Well, actually, I didn't really choose this as a venture. I think it just happened serendipitously. This gets started actually in the middle of COVID. And as we all know, during COVID, everything was shut down. And so I have a pretty big office, a lot of staff. And during COVID, everyone left except me and my wife. Which was actually a very good thing, because my career was always very busy. And as I was just staying in my office, seeing occasionally just a few patients that drop in because they have to see us, we found people with very, very advanced cancer that comes in. Something that actually really is still on my mind was seeing somebody in their late 20s, early 30s with a melanoma that are probably the size of my fist. And I already, when I saw him the first time, he's already had a metastasis to his lymph node. So his life, his life expectancy is greatly affected because of this. And so I was talking to Keith, and we thought that maybe we could do something about this. And he's hired Dr. Josie, who came and actually worked out something, because I have a very large practice and we have a lot of images. we looked through that and we found with the technology these days and the data, we were able to identify skin cancer very accurately, and that's how the companies get started. And as we get started, there is no questions that we are at a crossroad. I think we're living in a very interesting time with the combinations of human innovations as well as the support of technology. A lot of things can be done. We heard today how AI can actually help to sequence, for example, peptide, and a lot of it can shorten finding the right drugs for the right treatment. With technology, we can bring people together, so then people can actually talk about what are important to them.
So I think it was Rakesh just a couple of minutes ago talked about going from bench to bedside. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned from working with Skinopathy a little bit, not working, but learning from you is how that entire journey of the patient from the moment that they're aware of a disease, let's say skin health disease or psoriasis or vitiligo, to the point where they're on medication and they need to stay on that medication. That could be, there's a technology that could be used to take that patient through that journey. So I'm wondering if you can discuss a little bit what a tool like Skinopathy can do, not just from the drug discovery piece, but when the patient's actually on, well, is diagnosed, or actually before diagnosis, knows that they have a condition and they have to get diagnosed and then right to being on therapy, and how something like Skinopathy can live with them.
Well, I'm very excited about the potential and what Skinopathy can do now, and hopefully do even better into the futures. So it's really a patient journey system. It helps to basically for people to reach us through technology. So people can actually use our platform, take some pictures, answer some questions, and hopefully it will give you a list of potential differential diagnosis. With this, it will help to triage how serious that condition is. Is that condition something that you need to see somebody right away because it might be life-threatening? Or it could be, it's something that, yes, you can look at it, and you don't need to panic over this, right? So number one, it would help to triage and onboard patients to a physician's or maybe just a nurse practitioner's, etc. So then your journey can be shortened. And then the next thing is it's get to know the patients, the patient journey, so to speak. We ask questions about their past medical histories, their medications, etc., and hopefully also be able to get information from the family doctor, the lab report, etc., and have AI help to put everything together so then it gives context and intelligence to the physicians when they get to see you. And as everybody knows, the physician times, unfortunately, are very limited. There's just a very limited number of physicians to take care of a very large, vast number of patients that need help. So when you do leave the office, it will be so much better that we actually kind of journey out the thing that you need to do. So if we were going to be using a cream or taking a medications or even having surgery, the fact that everything described for you so that you can actually review it and your family member can also review it, I think that that's a very important thing. On top of this, when everything are all digitized, record done, both in pictures and sometimes also surgery pictures or time series of how you improve or not improve given to whatever therapeutic you were given, there's a lot of value in medical or pharmaceutical research.
So I'm going to put a little bit of my pharma hat on in terms of a bit of skepticism, because I get very excited when you talk about patients taking control of their health and being able to access something maybe from a remote area, people who don't have access to derms. At the same time, I know throughout my career, physicians aren't going to, and they shouldn't, just take a technology very lightly, and especially now with a lot of things going on with the opaqueness of AI, it's not something that everyone's comfortable with. So you've got a picture, I know Keith always says you can use your mom's iPhone 6 to take a picture. Sounds funny, but it's actually an incredible thing to be able to democratize something like that and not to go into a dermatologist's office and have to go through a machine, let's say, to take your face picture. However, as a physician, I have some reservations sometimes. One is around the data. So how secure is this data at Skinopathy, let's say, versus the government EMR? Because you have your own EMR, and some of the physicians in that system are using other EMRs, of course. The other question is, what about accuracy, and what about misdiagnosis and things like that? And I realize it's not a diagnostic tool, it's more a decision support tool, but if you could just address some of those things, because I would be surprised if patients or people would want to just rush into something unknown like that.
Well, firstly, we are actually dealing with health data. So everything has to be controlled and regulated by HIPAA. So basically, all the data will be sitting on a closed cloud environment, which is HIPAA compliant, number one. And secondly, I do look at everything that we do, the digital, the AI algorithm, etc. They are not really taking over the physician job. They're there to really assist you. It's really no difference than, for example, using Copilot to look over your grammar, your English, or having self-driving technologies in a Tesla. I mean, basically, you're still responsible to drive that car. And hopefully, everything like this give actually another degree of security, because it's proven very clearly in other branches of medicine, for example, in radiology, that you can actually pick out a lot of things that maybe you will look over. Like sometimes very, very obvious thing is obviously very clear, but what if you miss a little speckle on the chest X-ray that might be the beginning of skin cancer? So if you can imagine a physician, if they are looking at 100 or 120 chest X-ray, and they're very experienced, but what if somebody caught them and suddenly you have that 10 seconds concentrations changes that you might miss something. So I look at this as a tool, no different than our smartphone recording down all our emails so we can actually fund them.
So on the positive side of that, if I'm a physician and let's say I'm in the rural communities and I don't have huge access to, my patients are not able to go, and sometimes they're not rural. I think you had a case, a friend of mine came into the system and I think she lived in Cornwall. And Cornwall's not a tiny place, but there were no dermatologists in Cornwall. And actually she tried to access the system because of her aunt, who was told that the mole was fine, don't worry about it. She was worried. She actually happens to be in the pharmaceutical industry, so she looked up Skinopathy. She found you guys had a real class 2 device. This is a real thing. Sent her mom in. And I think you found something right away that was suspicious, or at least you saw something, and she was triaged right away to a dermatologist in Ottawa who took out the mole and said it was cancerous. And that story is one of many, many stories. Helping patients, I totally see that. But I also wanted to ask you about the life of the physician going through a tool like that, because the other thing that we need to be very cognizant of is there's a workflow that happens, and there's the payment system, for instance, in Ontario versus Quebec versus the US is very different, and that's the reality. Some things are just not easy to use, and they add a difficult situation to a physician's practice. So from that perspective, is there something that actually makes a physician's life easier? And I'd love to say that also makes them better as physicians, but is that actually happening?
Well, I would say that despite of everything that we have done, and I have to give credit to many members who are sitting in this corner, who are in different sections of our team, our technical team, our AI team, our business team, marketing team, they work extremely hard. But I still think that whatever we have done so far is still very, very early and in the infancy stage. So one of the things is physicians or nurses are very busy, and we can have so many different things trying to help the patient journey. So if you can imagine, people reach typical doctor's office by fax, by email, maybe WhatsApp, maybe a voicemail message, and then you have your traditional EMR thing. And then can you imagine now you add another tools to them? So now you have like 6, 7 totally independent input things into this. It's really, really difficult. So I think our vision is to come up with something that actually unite all the data, put it in a very, very concise, yet very comprehensive thing so that nothing is missed. Something like this, like what if, for example, somebody seeing you and their family actually left a message on the phone saying that you're allergic to certain things, right? And if that message wasn't actually being captured properly, then there could be a gap in the treatment. So I do think that a lot of these things truly require machines, AI to unite everything, because if you just rely on human, it's going to be very, very difficult. And also some of these repetitive things can be done by machines so that people who are people can concentrate serving more people. Because at the end of the day, we still need human interactions to complete that treatment journey.
So interesting when you talk about human in the center, and someone said earlier that we're not talking about patients, we're talking about people with vitiligo. Can you talk to me a little bit about, or talk to us about what specific things about vitiligo make this, what you're doing, unique in terms of the whole experience of a person? There's the whole beauty side, of course, there's the emotional side. And is there anything unique there with technology that you think could be suitable?
Well, I think vitiligo, it has many uniqueness, but it also shares a lot of common thing with other disease. This is unfortunately a chronic disease. This is also a disease that carry emotional side to it. Also the treatment has to be a very long process. And just like some of the speakers that alluded to earlier, how do they really know that they're really getting better, right? And how do you give them hope that, yes, the process is slow, but yes, you are getting better? When you actually looking at your skins daily, it's very difficult to tell truthfully, is the treatment working or not? Especially when it's going very slow, okay? I think having technology like this, that you can actually capture the thing and follow up yourself, is very useful. The other thing also is taking this entire journey, capturing the thing as well. Hopefully, something like this can actually let you maybe put notes to this, and also find helps if you want to speak to somebody about this for support. I would think that able to even talk to other people who are serving the same journey can be very helpful.
Thank you. Do we have, Richard, do we have any questions, or Richard's, no problem. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not going over time. I didn't bring my watch.
No, you still have a few minutes, but we do have at least one question here that I'm ready to bring up. And it's a very direct one. Do you think AI is going to replace doctors?
For a very, very long time, I don't think so. I really don't think technology replaces people. I think that I would actually think differently. I think technology actually empower people. I think the thing is, people who don't use technology will be replaced by people who use technology.
All right, that's all we have right now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Orchid, we would like to invite you to the Order of World Vitiligo Day Canada, and of course, you as well, Dr. Hong. All right, folks, it's time for another break. And as you may have noticed, we tend to give you longer ones than you would do at most conferences you go to, because you tend to have to rush and you want to talk to people and get to know people. So we purposely give you extra time so that you can get your bio break and actually talk to others. So we'll see you in about half an hour. Talk soon.